The changes tend to cascade very easily. If I want to make a change here, then I need to make a change here and a change there. If I want to change a column in the database, I need to go and change my business layer, I need to change my framework, I need to change my UI, I need to change everything that column touches. Nothing is isolated. So, that also then leads to the possibility of testing. Testing this application becomes very difficult. And what you end up doing in most scenarios is endpoint testing. You get the QA people in a room and they run these scenarios which they expect the user to run over and over again, expecting to catch all the edge cases. And if you don't have a QA team, then what do you do? What do you do?
You do it so much like.
You get the poor user come and test it for you. Right? But that's not how it should be done. Testing should be given a different paradigm, a different thought. Anyway, so if type coupling is a problem, then what? Sorry. We need to loosely couple our applications. We need to have a separation of concerns. Right? So if we make changes, those changes are restricted in the layers or the architected pieces. Right? They don't cascade everywhere. And there are various solutions to this problem. This is not a new problem. There are existing patterns that help to solve this problem. And few of them are mentioned here. To start with, we have the model view controller, or MVC. This has been there for quite some time. And it's also there in ASP.NET. You have the MVC implementation of it. Then you have the model view presenter. A lot of people are using that. Model view presenter or MVP, and it has nothing to do with the MVP program Microsoft runs. Then you have this new kid in the block called the model view model. And the MVVM is very nice in implementing Silverlight applications. You will see why. MVVM is a very nice pattern when you're building applications using WPF or Silverlight. It addresses three main areas. One, testability. Testing is one of the major reasons why we are using MVVM today. Many people use MVVM for the sake of testing. Second is it gives you structure in code. So even if you do not want to test your application and you implement MVVM, it's going to benefit in the structure that it brings. And anything that brings structure into your code, the way you organize things, will make your applications more maintainable and readable. And lastly, it gives you this separation of concerns, right? And there has been a push for a long time to separate the presentation layer from the backend logic, right? And that is something that we should move forward and implement. So as I said, MVVM says that you have a presentation layer, and this should be separate from your rest of the business, right? From the business logic and the rest of it. It goes on further to say that the presentation layer itself, right, should be looked at and better segregated. So what we can do is we can take the UI and take away any behavior that's not relevant to that UI out. Right? You can segregate that out. And what you have is a view or the UI and a view model. Right? So in the case of Silverlight, we have the view, which is our sample. Right? And we have the model, which represents your data objects, your business objects, or any objects that contain your business information. Now, in most cases, the model is not a true representation of your UI. You cannot directly represent it as your UI. It has properties that you don't care about, right? Or it is missing information that you need in your application. So what you need is a way to create a view on top of that model, right? So that you can map it very easily to the UI. And that is where the view model comes in. It sits between the view and the model and creates a binding surface between the model and the view. So the view only interacts with the view model and not with the model directly. The view model also allows you to add commands or verbs so that you can interact with the model much easier, because in most cases the model is not going to have any intrinsic behavior, right? The most it will have is methods to load your data or save the data. But what if you want to navigate your data set? What if you want to search? Where do you put that code? Yes, I know. It goes in the click handle of the button. Welcome to degree 6. That's not where you should be doing things, right? The click handlers should not be used for those things. You should segregate that logic out and you should put it into the view model. That's where it belongs. And we'll see in the demo. Now if you look at the application implementation, right, a Silverlight application implementation, you have the server and you have the client application. On the server, we have services written in VB, C#, PHP. They can be WCF services or they can be REST-based services. It really doesn't matter. What is important to keep in mind is that the server represents your data. That's where the data is going to come from. On the client, we have this mix of XAML and C# or VB. The model is responsible for interacting with the services. It encapsulates your service calls. It abstracts that communication between the application and the services out. The view model sits on top of the model and creates a view or a shape that you can bind your data to, right? And the view then interacts with the view model. So you can have many views interacting with one view model, right? And the view model then interacting with your model. So we'll go into a demo. We'll take a complete end-to-end implementation of the MVVM pattern. And I emphasize the word pattern because there are implementations of the pattern that are available publicly, right? These are the frameworks that are available. We are not looking at a framework here. What we are looking at is how this pattern works, right? To give you a better understanding of MVVM. And I will talk about the implementations that are available later on. I will list them out to you so you can have a look later. So I'll switch to my demo machine. And I have Visual Studio running here. I'm going to start by creating an HTML application. And I'm going to call it open.door.web, and let's put it in a folder called open.door. So I have a ASP.NET application, right? I'm going to create an entity framework model. Sorry. And we'll call this NW model. We're going to link up to a Northwind database, so we're going to call it NW model. So it's going to bring back my database objects, and we'll select the categories and the products for this demo. Click finish. Now I'll add the service. So I'm going to create a, let's call it NW data service. So this is a WCF data service I'm creating, right? So let's configure this. Everybody can see clearly? Okay. So here I'm going to give the name of my data service, which is going to be not entities. And I'm going to say give me all the objects and all the operations. So far so good. Let's compile this. I will go and set a static port number, so it's easy for us to reference. I'm going to set it to 2010, and let's run this service. So I know the service runs, it's returning me my entities, the categories and the products. Let's copy the URL. We'll use this later on. Now what I want to do is create a Silverlight application that's going to consume this service, right? So go into the projects again, properties, go to the Silverlight tab, and we'll add an application here. And let's call this open-door.sl for Silverlight. We are okay. Now what I want to do in my Silverlight application is create some structure. Okay? So I'm going to start with the model folder. So I'm going to create a folder for model. I'm going to create one for the view model and one for the view. If at any point you lose me, please, I haven't understood, ask me, because we're going to move very fast. Now in the view, let's start with the model first. I'm going to add a new class. Now what I want to do is create a Silverlight application in which I can represent my products. I want to show the products in the list, and when I click on the list, I want to see the product details. So I'm going to create a model which is going to represent my interface to the data, and we will call it the product model. Now I mentioned earlier that testing is very important, and we should keep in mind whenever we write code how to test our application. I will start implementing the product model here itself, but then it does not give me the flexibility to test it. So what I want to do is encapsulate that into an interface. So this is going to implement that interface, and whenever we want to create a mock test class for our data, we can also implement it from the same interface and test our applications. And I'll explain that more in detail later on. So let's create an interface for that. I will call it product model. So we'll create a class for that. Come on. Now, what do I want to do with this? I want to have a method which gets the products, right? So we're going to start with a method saying void get products by category. Now, since this is Silverlight, all calls are going to be asynchronous, right? And this is going to take a parameter for category.